Hi, I'm Tania A. Prince, and my guest today is Maureen Fearon. I'm thinking how to introduce Maureen. Complex, because she's a woman of many talents, many skills. I know she is a go-to if I ever want to I think about expanding my business. This is the woman who will go boom, 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 boom. She's also the love guru. And I would say Maureen is very passionate about furthering natural health treatments, and she's done a lot of work in grief and loss, and she's done some pretty amazing things. So, can I say welcome, Maureen?
You certainly can.
Oh, I missed your book out there, but
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
can I
Oh,
get
we'll leave the book for now. Oh, well, no, she's getting the book. Yeah, and she's written that as well. I know she's actually writing another book as well, but we're going to really just talk about grief, loss, and those kind of things. And the reason for that is in my private Facebook group for my students, one of them, and this happens quite often periodically, one of them had some questions about this particular topic. Maureen just got on the phone and says, well, why don't we talk about it? I know I answered it there and give some, but it's actually written text is different than talking about it. So we are going to talk on this, what would I say, unescapable problem. Yeah.
yeah.
That therapists do and have to work with all of the time, but all of us through life come across this at some point in time. I think it's just part of the human experience, isn't it? In fact, I go to it's part of the cycle of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that being said, so welcome, Maureen. Mhm.
Thank you. It's so wonderful. It's always wonderful to talk to you, but also to be sharing knowledge and know-how. Was that your door just shutting then?
That was my husband. Yeah, I did forget to tell him we were going to do this call. So actually, I take responsibility for that. Now he's going to disappear. I think I just got a bit lax. Typically, I would warn him, stick a note on the door, but I'm just thinking, I'm just going for this. um, yeah, so yes, my gorgeous husband. So, Maureen, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've done in this particular area, because I know you're kind of a groundbreaker to some degree.
Yeah. Of course, you've known me for probably coming up to, yeah, it's coming up to a long, long time, Tanya. I nearly said 20 years.
Might be.
Well, I think it was 2008. So yeah,
Nice. Mhm,
yeah, it's longer. But anyway,
mhm,
so as you know, I hate to see people suffering.
mhm,
It just I want to find a solution to inequality way, in a caring, quality way. I want to find solutions to helping people as fast as is possible. And when of course I came on your training program for EFT and became trainer, and then with your mindfulness inner repatterning, mindfulness based inner repatterning, it was around about that time that I became a specialist in grief and loss. And I attribute it to the inner repatterning process, as it was then inner repatterning, and
mhm,
it developed to, because I was client types kind of like come in themes and are there to teach us lots. And I was getting an awful lot. And because of the results I got with bereavement and loss, I then went around many funeral homes talking to funeral directors and spreading the news of what's possible. And so it's a most treacherous time for most people. For others, it's fine. And, we don't need to, they're fine. We don't need to talk about them. But for an awful lot, it's treacherous. And I know back in 1995, when I lost my mum, I suffered for 9 years. And by suffering, I mean, I had no control of my tears. So I'd be happy. I was a manager at the time. I'd be happy doing whatever. Then all of a sudden, the tiniest little thing would send me instantly into overwhelming emotions. And what I didn't know then, I was doing all the wrong things, but trying my best and trying really hard. And so I was continually getting all the wrong results. And so had I known then what I know now, I'd have happily gone and booked however many sessions it's needed. And as we know, the power of the energy methods, not very many sessions are always needed. And so as a result of when you, around the time that you launched Inner RePatterning, that's when my journey of becoming a bereavement and loss expert began. And I like to get people in torture so that I can help them there and then. But it's not for the faint-hearted. It isn't just a case of going in and go, oh, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. It really is a complex business. And next year, one of the next books that I'm putting out is Recovery from Grief, Bereavement and Loss.
Yeah.
Because there is a huge, great big myth out there. And you may have heard of, I'll never get over it.
Yes, I have heard of that. I don't believe it.
No, well, the truth is, it depends what you do. And I like to give people choice. So choice over grieving or not to grieve, hurting or not to hurt. And if you choose to hurt, that's fine. Because even if you're choosing, that's empowering at a level. Yeah. And so I want people to be able to have the choice and then the mechanisms to be able to go through that process in their own design. Yeah. And I know I do public speaking and do all sorts of things. I'm a trainer. But when my mum died, I was so in dreadful emotions. It was awful. It was really awful. I didn't even think about I'd like to speak a few, because there was no way that I could speak a few words. And some years ago, my brother-in-law, who was really special to me, I've known him since I was maybe 11, and he passed away. And the processes got me through and helped me deliver his eulogy without any tears, and go through his funeral without any tears. Now, of course, when I got home, I cried my blooming eyes out, but that's okay. And it's about tears as well. I want people to understand we've got a choice with tears, dependent on what we do. And a lot of people will go, you're saying it's wrong to cry. It's like, no. Listen to the words I've just said. It's about choice. I recommend you cry when you want to cry. And if there are times when you don't want to cry, this is how you can manage that. And it's kind of like, that makes sense. It's like, yeah, so it's giving people the choice. It's not saying that anything is right or wrong, because it's individual choice. And it's, yeah, let's heal the suffering. So that's kind of like where I come into. So I like to get into the raw grief to be able to help people. And as I say, it is not for the faint-hearted. So as a result of that, I've helped people before their loved ones has passed away. I've helped strangers on the phone. Well, not strangers, but people I hardly know. Maureen, I believe you can help me. My parent has died. I'm going to keep it very vague so that, it keeps confidentiality. My parent has died and I just can't stop crying. I'm not a person that cries, but I just can't stop crying. What can you do? So it's like, right, okay. And was dreading the funeral. And it's like, right, okay. When's the funeral? It's in an hour. It's like, okay, then. This is over the telephone. And so, okay, we worked with the processes and got to a place. Then midway through the processes, mentioned, oh yes, and I'm delivering the eulogy. And it's kind of like, right, okay, so I think there was about 40 minutes worth of time that we actually had to be working on it. And then it was kind of like, we've done our best. Well, let's see. So when she left the phone call, we were not able to get the tears to come up. So it's like, okay, think of those thoughts that you had before that brought on the tears. No. Think of what you think might, like the seeing the coffin or those kind of things. Yeah, perfectly fine. So it was a real joy later to get a text to say, not a tear fell from my eyes. Thank you.
That's what you wanted as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I'll point out there how, once you're doing any therapy, what you were doing is testing your work at the end for the likely triggers Yeah. So you've done the work, then you go back to the potential triggers and just checking, all right, that's done, that's done. Of course, you couldn't be 100% sure there might not be a trigger that you hadn't worked with. Yeah. But the therapy is about, I suppose, just doing your best to hit as many of those, and a short amount of time, and yet some very substantial work, really, with that.
Yeah, and understanding, because ideally when we have a client, normally what we'd like to try and do is get the SUDS mechanism, that feeling, that problem that you have, 0 to 10, what is it? But there are times when there's no time for that.
No.
Because you have to go straight in to be able to help them, eyes looking up and, peripheral vision and going into it to emotionally rescue them. Now, one of the things that is really good to know as a practitioner, ideally we want to be able to test those results to make sure that we've got those results. Now, sometimes the client will be aware of the results and sometimes they will not. Because of the magic of time, 20 minutes later, when there's a significant change, they might have forgotten where their starting point was. So, and with grief, it's not just one tiny thing that's it, you're done. It really is more complex. So you might make great big shifts and you might have measured 0 to 10, etc., or not, because sometimes we can't do that. And you might make massive shifts and they're not crying, for example, they're not crying anymore. And they still say, well, you know what, I'm not sure it's worked for me.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's for me. And so we've also got to become eloquent at very gently helping them understand that, okay, let's just go back to, do you remember at the very beginning how you were? And how we've tested and to help them, because that's just part of their thinking state when people are in grief or even in overwhelm and other situations as well. So it is useful because you want them to know that this process works so that they can turn to it and turn to us when they need it. So as a coping mechanism, whether they're in the car going to the funeral or afterwards. So a lot of people, depending on who the person is that's passed away, afterwards can feel incredibly lonely and alone and isolated, so that when they're in that situation, they can use the methods in a very basic coping way. So we want to make sure that we protect them in that way as well.
Yeah, that's why it is so important to kind of get an initial evaluation of, however you do that, because it doesn't, EFT or mindfulness based inner repatterning doesn't fit with what people always believe therapy should be. They've watched the TV, haven't they? On there it's, you go through all this pain. In fact, there's a lovely saying, there's no gain without pain, isn't there? Yeah, that lovely saying as well. So they have an expectation, a belief system around what they think should happen in the therapy process, and of course this doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
What you're doing with these techniques is you're working in alignment with how we function. Yeah, you're supporting the body's natural healing methods. And so, they've still got that belief, therapy should be this, and I haven't had this pain, and it's been too short a time. Yeah, so there's all of these at play there. But I totally go with you. I mean, I had, this is years ago, I always laugh at this. I did this therapy with a person, tested at the end, and the first thing, I don't know if I'd gone to the full testing at this point, but they said, oh, yeah, talking about the problem helped. And I went, what? I was talking about it. They said, yeah, talking help. And I says, well, you know lots of people who talk about their problems, don't you? And they went, yes. Does it get rid of them? Or do they keep talking about their problems? Oh, they keep, right. So did talking about their problem help? Did it help you? Or was it the techniques we use? So you do need to dispel anything, like you say, that's not going to support them to use these techniques in the future, because you're doing them a favor doing that.
And that's what I would call to have in your preparation practitioner's kit. So whilst we're saying it nice and easily, we've been doing it for years. So it is really easy for us. And it's there instantly. The more we learn, the more it's there in the toolbox and we can quickly learn. And so we want to, you're either going to feel comfortable or not. And that's just that simple measurement. Am I comfortable in that situation or not. And if it's or not, then it's a little project to how do I get comfortable in that situation? Because especially when it comes around to bereavement and loss, we are walking. So Forrest Gump said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Working with bereavement and loss is like a box of exploding chocolates. You never know when they're going to go off. And so we really do want to be, without being patronizing, so that is no good to anybody. We want to be very understanding of the sensitivities and how people can be easily triggered. And so we looking at language, and in the good old NLP, that phrase, the difference that makes the difference, that becomes so useful. And another thing that I would highly recommend practitioners know, because we're working with this box of chocolates which look great, and then you might actually get in the firing line for what seems like abuse, which I've experienced a few times. And it's not about us, it's about what they're going through. And so we need to be managing ourselves and understanding them. You know, that old phrase, attack is the first line of attack. Defense. Attack is the first line of defense. And so we want to be understanding that, rather than going, oh, it's me, I've gone wrong, I've done wrong, or whatever. No.
That's interesting, because, you know, you get a lot of irrational anger that can come up with this, and hence why I feel for them sometimes. A lot of people will have this, and sometimes it's right, you know, but there's irrational anger as well. And sometimes people will blame the doctor, you know, they didn't do this, and they're missing the fact there've been this horrific accident. And you know, sometimes miracles do happen, but they don't always happen. And maybe the anger is being directed at the wrong person in that particular case. But equally, as you said there, that can be there as an emotion, irrational anger, and it can flip,
literally explode. And when I come across this, you know, I'm a little bit of a weirdo. When I come across this, I inside go, great, because from there we make the biggest shifts. In my experience, made the biggest shifts. So I'm completely comfortable with it, know how I'm going to navigate around it, and know that they're going to get their best shift. And I love it, because then releasing it really does help them on their healing journey. And so for me, I never take it personally, no matter what it is. I've had swearing and all, you know, some bereavement clients have taught me how to swear.
Well, I haven't had so much of that irrational anger directed at me, but you know, we'll have different types of clients, because you're dealing with it immediately after. And you know, I tend to get the ones who've had it for many years, that it's been there and many years. They may not have even discussed it with anyone, and it's just not gone, because there's another myth, isn't it? Time heals. No, time allows us to bury it deeper, but it's still there, impacting us at some level within our body, whether it's with our health issues, whether it's behavioral, whether it's emotional. So time doesn't always heal when we have these big
not at all. And I've worked with people in their 70s that have had decades of suffering, decades of it being on their shoulder, really pressing them down and spoiling their lives. And in some cases, because of the nature of how sophisticated the mind works, it can connect into guilt, which can, if we do guilt really, really, really well, it can make us a slave. And so when they do, so for example, my mum passed away, totally unexpected, and it was the worst thing that's happened in my life. And I didn't kill her, honest, but the guilt I felt was beyond. And I'd done nothing contributing to her death. Honestly, I really hadn't. And this is, a lot of people experience this, and your mind goes, what if I could, what if I should have done this, I should have done that, if I could have done this, I wish I'd have done this, you know, even truly irrational. I wish I'd sold my house and given my mom all the profit. Yeah. I'd live in a tent.
There's cases, I have worked with a lot of this type of stuff, and it can be the thing that holds it all in place, the horrific feelings. So getting rid of guilt can be a key element for some people.
That was my starting point.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, on an NLP training course. And I'm a skeptic. So an awful lot of the stuff like, no disrespect, but when I came across EFT, it's like, got to be a con. Can't work. That can't work. There's got to be something in it. And I, a very beyond rookie, tried it on my mild asthma. And it's like, that's interesting. Within 4.5, because I timed it, because I like to evidence.
4.5. You didn't finish that. 4.5 minutes, hours, seconds.
No, just 4.5 minutes. It's like, right. And this was, I can remember it in my mind. I was sat, because I'm allergic to cats. And it was at the time when cigarette smoke was still allowed in pubs and restaurants. And so that brought on my asthma. So noisy breathing. So it's like Mrs. Doyle, the cat, sat on my knee, allergic to cats, and the smoke thing. So I had my noisy breathing. So it's like, right, let's see if you're any good. And this is what was right. If you're any good, let's see if you can shift this thing. And and then literally 4.5 minutes, it's like my noisy breathing had gone and it was back to normal breathing. I couldn't rasp. And I thought, well, it doesn't matter. I know how it works. Mine gets worse through the night, and then it starts getting better around about 5 o'clock in the morning. So it will wake me up at least twice. I went right through and slept and woke up without it. And it's like, that's got to be a fluke. Got to be a coincidence. And then I tried it on a backache that I had at the traffic lights. I'll always remember traffic lights at Kingsway, which is about 2.5 minutes. And it's like, right, okay, if you're any good, see what you can do with this. And it's like, how can that go? And I got so curious and confused and that's why I signed up to come. Like, right, okay, 3 days, I'll find out what the con is. And then of course it's like, oh my word, life-changing. And so I was a skeptic. And when I went to NLP, we were doing what's called a timeline exercise. And me and I'm also a Catholic. So we're great at doing guilt. We're born as sinners. So we do guilt before we've made a mistake, before we've sinned. And I worked with a very now treasured friend, and we were both skeptics going, this is a load of rubbish, it's not going to work. And it's like, right, okay. And I had no understanding that I had a guilt association with the healing process of my mum. I because everything, I wouldn't even think about the word MUM. I stayed away from it because it would trip me into overwhelming tears. And so this timeline exercise, when was the original event? The very first event of feeling guilt. Was it before or after you were born? It's like, what a stupid question. My first memory is 4. So, and it's like, right, start again. Breathe, Maureen. Sadly, we didn't know the elements that you teach in terms of eyes and peripheral vision. So it's like, right, okay, try again. And then it went, day 1. Why would a baby feel guilty on day 1? And of course, my birthday's on Christmas Day, and I've always felt guilty that my poor mum had me on Christmas Day, that she had to go through that pain and suffering on Christmas Day. And rationalize, it's like, well, what's that all about? That baby should not have. And so because of the process, I was able to totally take away all of that guilt. And that was when I decided, because it's like, now test it, you test your results. So it's like, right, now test something that would normally make you feel guilty. Well, being a Catholic, got billions of those. And it's like, right, okay, so yeah, it's not there. It's like now something a little bit more significant. Yeah, that's it. Something that, guilt and maybe feel ashamed. And it's like found a memory when I was about 6. Which I'll save that for another day. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's fine as well. And only after those series of testing would I allow my mind to go connected to the sense of I hadn't even thought about it, but I knew I had it when I was doing this process, and it was fine. And that began my healing journey of the grief that I had over my mum. And
you had to clear guilt. And what you also said, and it's a very key point here, you needed several convincers. Yeah, and they are convincers. Any therapist should do convincers to prove that what they've done has actually impacted the problem. You see, because otherwise, you see, Maureen would have gone out there and think, well, that was interesting. She might not have even realized, even if the problem might have been gone, she might not have even realized that it happened and it was that moment in time when she shifted it. Convincers are important. I mean, timeline, I'm trained in timeline. I love the approach. I did it many years ago, so I did a lot of work with it years ago. But you'll go back to specific events, a time in the past where previously you felt that emotion of guilt, get back into that event, and what happens, you know? And they really do a lovely testing, and you tend to find people go to the first one and they go, oh yeah, oh, where's it gone? You tend to find that happens. You know, I am going to actually need to pause for a moment. Because I'm having some work done at my place, and I'm going to pause and let the guy in. So I'll be a couple of minutes there, Maureen. So let me pause the recording.
Sure.
After that little break, Maureen, something came to my mind when I was walking to go and deal with the guy who's come to the house. Give some instructions, you know. That is, you know, I made a comment earlier on about we deal with things at a very different point in the process. For example, you will sometimes deal with it immediately, yeah, as in it's just happened, yeah. I have kind of done a little bit of that, but the predominant grouping of people who come to see me come after a period of time, so it's been long term. The difference in the way you treat them is you're doing a lot of stabilization at that point, yeah. Whereas I've got the time to pre-frame everything and prep it to enable them to let it go. So I'm dealing with the deep transformation of earlier in life, yeah. Whereas you've got to stabilize first before you can go there.
Well, it's a little bit like A&E.
Yeah.
You've just got to do whatever, get them into resource and do whatever. However, because well, I don't know, it's probably literally thousands of clients I've worked with bereavement. There have been clients that have come to me where the death has been many years ago, even many decades ago, and they're not even aware that what's really going on underneath is loss, never getting because in their mind they've shut it off, compartmentalized it. And so like the box of chocolates, we just have to, I know I like to work with the raw, but we just have to understand that anything can happen at any time. And so it's good for all practitioners to be really robust in knowing whatever happens, I'm going to be able to work with that. I'm going to be able to deal with that. And there's no shame at all to go, well, I'm not so sure. That's a brilliant awareness to make a note of, and then go and do some development work on it. Because if I can get comfortable with it, anyone can.
Yeah, because I think what happens here is that a lot of therapists are taught or see things on the TV that implies these are the worst of the worst, very difficult to deal with. No, it isn't any more difficult than any other form of trauma. Although I would say there's a subtlety in working with it. I don't tend to do flash, bang, wallop with it, or like, let's get rid of that trauma. You know, I think there's a subtlety in how you deal with it.
You have to. You absolutely have to. So even though I'm A&E and want to go, even though the dashing in, it has to be very gentle.
Yeah. It
has to be so respectful. It has to be so well paced to be able to get the results in the moment. So we really are dealing with something incredibly sensitive. So well, I mean, also, whatever a client is experiencing, I have that same approach of totally being as comfortable. My mind might know whatever it might know, but in that moment, very gently, because that's absolutely what's needed, and it is part of the process moving forward. And when we were talking earlier about the timeline aspect, I'd highly recommend practitioners thoroughly get into that, because, and I've brought a prop. So if we imagine here is the current times, and this is all the bereavement and loss, by going back in the past and exploring an old event that's linked to the emotions here, we're not talking about current events. So it makes it safer. When things happen to us in childhood and we learn how to talk around that in a really useful way, we can actually get stunning results that the mind system can actually bypass all of the events here and therefore make what's happening right now seem different.
Yeah, I would always go with that. I think we're both NLPers, aren't we, as well, trained in NLP. One of this, do the least amount of work for the greatest amount of benefit.
Yeah, because that minimizes their suffering. It's, you know, it's great for our time. It's also it's terrible for business though. You know, most people in our business are self-employed. So we're actually, instead of saying, okay, do you know what, you're going to need at least 13, lucky for some, you're going to need at least 13 sessions. I've never had anybody for grief for more than 4.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's including delivering a eulogy.
Right. Well, what you're looking at is it's past trauma, based on past trauma, at least, you know, the moment of shock of the original moment generally. And that's unprocessed out. That's raw in the back of the mind. The actual real event is always finished. Yeah, they lived through it. They survived the moment. What they have is it's a database we're dealing with. And we're just getting the mind to process it out in many ways and put it, all right, it's over now. Yeah. There may be other things linked and emotions attached, but you know, we're not dealing with the real event, that moment in time in reality, because it's always over. Yeah. We're dealing with the databases they're still tuning into, which creating the current situation and what's not feeling good right now. With that being said, we are going to need to finish because I didn't find the guy who came to my house. He's hiding. We'll need to go on a little hunt around and find him. But, you know, I said to you in the little break that there's a lot to be said on the conversation that we've engaged in today. There's far more than what we've said here today. But I'll just summarize very rapidly. We've talked about, you know, stabilizing or doing the deep transformation. Of course, if you're doing the stabilization, a lot of things can shift at a very deep level as well in that moment because it's raw. You were in touch with the whole thing. We've talked about the need for subtlety. We've talked about the need for convincers, just in case they don't believe that you can get results this fast. Or what I say fast, it doesn't have to be fast. It goes at a pace that's right for the person that you're working with. Yeah, but sometimes their belief system is where it is. And even though you may get fabulous results, their belief system might not be able to see them properly, simply because that's not what they've been taught or exposed to. So we do need to put powerful convincers in to, in a way, support their belief in these techniques. Yeah, mindfulness based inner RePatterning, EFT, support their belief in these techniques so that they then use them themselves afterwards. And I'm sure we spoke about a lot of other things.
Yeah, well, and for me, because because I have a real concern about what's going to happen in the future, and I have a real feel that practitioners are going to be so needed, and I want to see practitioners be their most robust, wonderful selves.
The main point I missed out.
Yeah, and so listening to, because we're a beautifully complicated system, listening to any kind of discomforts, and I like to make things really simple, as you know. Feeling a discomfort with the idea of X, Y, and Z, make a note of it because it's all changeable. You know, work with yourself, work with somebody else, and get yourself into your best place so that you feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well, the final thing I'll just say about which builds onto that is when I first came into this business and I had not been taught the techniques to work with this type of thing, I was like thinking, oh my gosh, bereavement, that's so, you know, client's going to be in all these tears, whatever. Once I got my head around that and you had the techniques, I was just thinking, I actually do like working with bereavement because you see the most beautiful transformations, beautiful indeed. And, you know, I've seen people reconnect to their spiritual beliefs and etc. and come in alignment with that. I say, you know, we all have different beliefs, but come into alignment, and they find a way, or it seems that they just come into that balanced place around this. And yeah, I suppose I keep going on final thing. I go on one more final thing. Cultures years ago had ways of dealing with this. We seem to have lost our way.
Yes.
Yeah, they had traditions and rituals around this, and I think, you know, we seem to not be doing those, or not true to those traditions. But in some way, we have to come back into alignment, because it is the circle. What was that? I have to know what happened. Are you coming back? A parcel. All right, Maureen, I thought something big was happening there. I did not think you were just going to get a parcel. With that, I am finishing. That's enough.
Did you not hear the doorbell?
What?
Did you not hear the doorbell?
No. I saw, what I saw was you going. Open to interpretation, Maureen. Luckily, I am a balanced person and can deal with these things. Used to know. With that being said, I am going to finish here. We will continue our conversation, because there's a lot more to deal with. There is things like the moment of trauma. We've spoke on guilt a bit, but there's more to be said about guilt.
Lots, yeah. And thank you to that practitioner that originally asked the question.
Yeah, and so there is more to do, a lot more to do on this, but yeah, with that, I will finish for now, and thank you for agreeing to join me here today, Maureen. I am now going to go and seek out what happened to the guy who came to the house, who seems to have mysteriously disappeared. I'll see you soon.
Right. Take care.
Bye. Bye.